Welcome to Hour 2 of the Midwest #1 weekly motorsports show, Track Talk, on the RacinBoys Broadcasting Network. Brought to you by McCarthy Chevrolet. Once again, here's Scott Traylor and Kirk Elliott.
Okay, hour number 2 here on RacinBoys Radio, RacinBoys Broadcasting Network. I want to thank everybody for following us over to RacinBoys.com. We're going to be talking a little more of the grassroots. We'll be definitely getting into some of the NASCAR stuff as well. Kevin Eckert's going to join us here in a little bit, talk about what's been going on with sprint car racing down in Florida in the last couple weeks. A lot of stuff going on. Danny Lasowski picks up a couple wins. Shane Stewart, 2 nights in a row down at East Bay. Craig Delansky gets a win down there as well. We're going to talk to him about what happened with Jason Sides at the end of last year, you know, with the World of Outlaws. That was a little bit of controversy. We read a lot about that on hoseheads.com. And I also want to pick his brain what he thinks is going on with Jason Meyers and his sudden announcement that he is going to run a limited schedule after coming off his second World of Outlaw championship. And then we'll wrap it up with a little ASCS National Tour action that's going to start taking place next weekend out at Canyon Speedway Park in Peoria, Arizona, just outside of Phoenix. We're going to be broadcasting those races live on RacinBoys.com. We'll take your phone calls as well. 816-833-8553, 816-833-8553. I'll talk about whatever you want to talk about. If you want to talk something on the local scene that's going on around here, we can do that. We're not far away from kicking off that season, and I know a lot of people are anxious to get out to their local tracks. We do know that some of our local guys, and I don't have a list of them in front of me, but we do know that some of our local guys are down running this weekend in Texas. Rick Beebe is down there. I think Ron Keith, Austin Siebert's down there. Terry Phillips is down there as well. Jason Hughes, he picked up his first win last night down there, didn't he, Kirk?
He did, and he looked pretty impressive doing that. That's after Terry Phillips won on Thursday night. So the USMTS off and going as they're going to be here in the Kansas City area a number of times here within the next several weeks. So we'll talk more about that here in the next coming weeks. Hey, I want to remind everybody this hour of Track Talk on RacinBoys, brought to you by McCarthy Chevrolet, located down in Olathe, Kansas. And Scott, you spent some time down there last weekend, I know, and a lot of things going on at McCarthy Chevrolet right now.
You're right, Kirk. Was down there last week and sold a couple cars. My girlfriend Kathy, her daughter Stephanie, she bought a new Equinox, and Alyssa, her friend, bought a car out there as well. So 2 more on the list for the people that support RacinBoys out there at McCarthy Chevrolet. And I know that Brian and all his staff out there got to talk to Monty Knight and so many of the guys out there. They just do us a great job supporting us. So, yeah, get out there, $12,000 discount on Silverados right now, or you can get 0% interest on your truck. And I kind of like that. As much as the discount, I think I like the 0% interest as much, because every time you make a payment, when they send you your statement the next month, it shows that much off of how much you paid for that car. And, man, it comes off of there fast when you do that 0% interest, Kirk. I'm just telling you, that's a big deal.
That is a big deal.
Huge deal.
That $10,000 low-price guarantee that you'll always have at McCarthy Chevrolet.
You're about ready for a new car. You need to get out to McCarthy and buy a new one, right?
Take a look. They've got a lot of great stuff out there, and head on out right now. They're just off Santa Fe on Rawhide in Olathe,
The
Kansas.
outer road. You can see them from the highway. If you're going south.
On the right-hand side.
If you're going south on the right-hand side. It's definitely a place you got to go. And if you want a used car, they got great deals on there. And if you want a different brand, they got plenty of those in the used car lot. So get out there, see Brian Schaefer. Tell him the RBs said, I'm here to buy a car because of the RBs. That when it comes to sprint car enthusiasts, I don't know if I know anybody more hardcore than Kevin Eckert. And you are passionate about your sprint cars, and you've been doing this a long time. For some of the people out there that aren't familiar with your work and your website, sprintcarstats.com, give us a little rundown of how you got in this game of sprint car racing and when it all started.
Well, I was at the races when I was 10 days old. Turns out my dad wound up writing. I don't think I followed my dad into writing, but he used to keep track of the East Coast modified stuff, and I kind of gravitated to the sprint cars, so I started going through old race papers and keeping results, mainly top 5 from sprints, all across. Well, it started as central Pennsylvania, and then it kicked to Ohio, and then it was Indiana, and I just started covering everything. And then I started writing for Gator Racing News out of Syracuse, New York in '82. I've been writing about sprint cars ever since for various publications. I changed to Speedway Scene and Keystone Auto News, and Open Wheel Magazine started up, and I started writing for it off and on over the years. I formed a Flat Out magazine, was the editor of that for a couple of years. And then here lately, I thought I'd take all my results and put them on a website where people could look things up. You know, if they want to know, you know, who won it, how many times Hockey won at California, Missouri, or something, they could go look that up on my site. And it was going pretty good. It was called the Open Wheel Times, but I got a virus. I got hacked, and the database has been in repair for about 2 years. I've been working on it every spare moment to get it back where it was. And I think here in another month, staying down here in Florida, hardcore research, I'll have her back where it was. And I write weekly columns on there. Sprint Car Stats is the name of the column, or the website now, SprintCarStats.com. And it's going to be basically Open Wheel Times under a different name, just so we can get out of the stink of the virus that hit us there about 2 years ago.
Those darn hackers, man. I tell you, they're always trying to get you. You know what I mean? Hey,
I guess.
Yeah. Kevin, before we get into current events, talk about those days back when you started. You're talking about the early 80s, man, and sprint car racing has come a long ways from those days, and I'm sure you've seen it all. The safety, the amount of money that people are spending on sprint cars, just the sport itself. Take us back to the early days and compare them to where we are right now.
Well, I was telling somebody the other night, you know, Sandy Spinell used to always, every other year, would set the standard for rigs. You know, it used to be if you had a dually and a chaparral trailer, boy, you were state-of-the-art. You know, you were high dollar. And then, you know, you get a little bigger, a little bigger, a little bigger. Next thing you know, you got a stacker trailer just like the Cup guys got. And now everyone's got them, you know. That's one big thing is the size of the rigs. And you spoke about safety. One of the main things I've seen, you know, I'm not old enough to have seen them without cages, roll cages, but, you know, I do remember in Central PA when it used to be, and that's where I used to go because I'm from Pennsylvania by birth. They had the skinny wings and the big blocks, and then they, you know, wanted to conform with the Outlaws, so they got the big wings and a little smaller motor with what they have now, the 410s. But one of the main things in safety I've seen, I was at Eldora the night that Brad Doty got paralyzed, and everybody had back then had the little bucket seats. They're just little half buckets that stopped about, you know, midway up your back, and they realized that's not the way to go. You can get bent backwards over it, you know, if things come apart in there. So everyone went to the full back seats, and nowadays, you know, these seats are, I wouldn't call them bulletproof, but boy, they're, you know, they got the wrap around the head and the wrap around the shoulders, and Butler Built makes a good one, and some other companies out there make really good seats to where a person can get out of these crashes without, not even without getting hurt, but without even being sore, really, to where they're, you know, they have to limp around or anything. That's one of the main safety innovations I've seen in the last 20 years, I'd say.
Yeah, and the cost, man. I mean, you go back, I don't know how many years ago, but these motors, you know, you got 410s that are costing upwards around $50,000, even 360s, which were supposed to be the affordable way to race, are now, you know, $35,000, $40,000. The freshen up on these motors are $6,000, $7,000, $8,000. The cost of sprint car racing has just went through the roof in the last few years, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, racing's always been expensive. You know, as a historian, you look back and, geez, an Offenhauser engine back in the 50s was, you know, was 5 figures, which was huge back then. But it lasted all year too. Like you said, you didn't have to get it rebuilt every 10 races. You know, racing's always been trying to figure out a way to limit the advantage of a rich man over a poor boy. But I don't know if they've ever succeeded. You just can't keep a guy with money from having 3 of anything you have 1 of. You know, that's just the way it is. And they've tried, and sometimes they just form a series. You know, I've heard the argument, well, a guy can't win a 410 race, he'll go get a 360. If he can't win a 360 race, well, then he'll go get a 305. You know, just keep trying to find a division that he can dominate, and maybe that's just human nature. I don't know. Yeah, racing, you know, that the money in it is Well, one of the things I've noticed that's different than when I really started chasing around is, most of the drivers now drive for their families. The only people who can justify the expense is maybe a father who thinks he's got the next Jeff Gordon by the tail, and he'll go out and he'll spend the money. But in the old days, like, a driver could show up without a ride and be pretty good and have a reputation and go into pits and find somebody's spare car or somebody that, wasn't happy with their driver. But now there's very few really, truly independent teams. If Junior stops running the sprint cars, Daddy's parking it. He's not going to find somebody else.
Is that because of the cost of sprint car racing? And then you look at it, if you've got to give, say, a driver 40% of your winnings, man, that's a big hit when it comes to the bottom line. And I think that's why a lot of guys, I've always said it, sprint car racing over the years was the best place for a guy to get a ride. But as times change, that's not happening as much. And I think that has a lot to do with it, that people, because of the cost, just can't afford to give up that percentage to a driver to come in and drive their car.
Yeah, there's some guys that'll, they'll have to settle. They all like to be 40% drivers. Some
right.
50%, but sometimes the owner says, look, I can't. I got to put a lot of that money back in. How about if you take 20%? And the guy wants to race. They're addicted to this. They want to race. So sometimes they take less and just to keep out there. But it's crazy. I don't know how. Car owners might be the craziest people in this sport.
No.
Promoters, of course, are up there, and the drivers risk. They risk life and limb, but that's a rare occasion. Fortunately, when someone gets hurt, but it's not that rare when somebody's wallet gets hurt, and it happens all the time. There's no guarantee with these motors. You buy one for $40,000 and it goes poof in the first race, and go get another one. I don't know how they keep doing it.
Kevin Eckert is joining us. He's one of the most knowledgeable sprint car gurus anywhere that I know in the country. And Kevin, who is the most talented sprint car driver you've ever seen?
Holy cow! What kind of question is that?
Oh, it's not that difficult. Actually, it's a three-way tie. I tell people the same thing. Steve Kinzer, Sammy Swindell, and Doug Wolfgang are the three greatest drivers I've ever seen personally.
Did you see Opperman? Did you see Jan Opperman race?
I did, but I didn't get to see him really on a good night. The first 5 sprint car races I ever saw, Kenny Willard won them all, and he was Jan's rival back then. But I caught Jan a couple of bad times, and I actually consider him the best of all time, given what I've researched and what I know to be fact. Because he drove without a cage, he was good on pavement, he was good on dirt, with wings, without wings. He really performed with a lot of crappy cars when you look back on it.
And that's the question I asked. Talented. Who is Steve Kinzer, we
stat-wise,
can say the greatest race car driver maybe anybody's ever seen. But as far as sheer talent is concerned, Jan Opperman really had it, didn't he?
He sure did. He was, he was one of a kind, and he united people, and he could do it all. And he did it against USAC. He beat people from coast to coast. He came into Central Pennsylvania. He won the second time he was ever there. He was amazing, and he helped more than anybody else. He helped the Outlaws, the image of the Outlaws, become something that people. I wouldn't say they didn't respect it before, but some of the national people, like USAC people, that didn't want to acknowledge what was going on in the backwoods, they were forced to after they got a look at the Flying Hippie.
Kevin, let's move on to current events. State of sprint car racing right now. We're seeing a lot of different things. Obviously we're connected with the Lucas Oil ASCS National Sprint Car Tour. People have given, and I know, I'm setting you up for. I could get myself in trouble with this question to you, but a lot of people are kind of naysayers about them cutting the purse and getting more dates. But I was privy to the meetings. I was at those meetings when we were up in Elma and Cottage Grove, when all the top 10 owners and drivers met and agreed to this cut in the purse to get more dates. What do you think as far as the negative stigma attached to that? I mean, just your opinion on that. Is it good that we get more dates, and just your whole philosophy behind that? And I'm probably setting myself up here, but go ahead.
Well, it's never competitors never like to hear the term "cut the purse." I mean, that just has a negative connotation to it right away. But when you look at ASCS in specific, they have all the little regions that feed the main national circuit, and those guys are generally running for about 1,500 to win. If they can't fill the gap in the Lucas Oil schedule, they'll be, they'll go run a Gulf South race.
Regional.
They'll run, exactly, and they're, they're running for a lot less than they do nationally. So if the national, the new cuts, and I haven't seen where they took the money out and where it's coming out of, but if say they could run for, because right now they're running for, I think 3,000 and 6,000 on a 2-day show, roughly.
It's 3,000 on the first day, 4,000 on the second day, and they're going to get a guaranteed, if you're in the top 10 in points, $750 worth of tow money, and that doesn't include your start money.
So it sounds like they're certainly trying to take care of the guys that travel nationally, and that's smart. But and the local guys, they're probably not going to really notice the change in the purse because they're not, they weren't getting the purse that was last year anyhow. So I don't know. We'll see how it shakes out. But I think it's kind of the same thing with the World of Outlaws. If they could keep their drivers busier under their banner, then there'd be less. First of all, there'd be less opportunity for them to stray, and you could kind of keep the perception that Shane Stewart is an ASCS driver and Jason Johnson is an ASCS driver, and if you want to see those people, you have to come to an ASCS race. If you leave big gaps in the schedule, they're professionals. They're going to fill them up with whatever they can, and then it does harm, in the public eye, the people who aren't as knowledgeable as us. They just think that you can go see those guys anytime. So why go pay the big money for the big race? So only time will tell how it's going to shake out. And the first instinct is cutting the purse is never good, but maybe at the end of the year, a kid like Brady Bacon will look and see that he made more money this way than he did last year, and then he'll be all for it.
Yeah. But what's your thoughts about the rivalry between the World of Outlaws and ASCS? I will tell you that it frustrates me to see. Sometimes we'll book a date with the national tour. I say we, just because I'm out there on the tour, and then all of a sudden the Outlaws book one, 100 miles away. There's this constant. I've got to get in and compete against you. Why can't we all just get along, man? I mean, really.
You know the answer to that.
No, I'm serious. Why can't it just be sprint car racing? I have this philosophy, Kevin, that why can't it just be sprint car racing? Because, like if you're a late model or a modified driver, you're a door banger guy, you've got your big motor for a heavy track and you've got your little motor for a dry slick track. Why can't it just be sprint car racing and you've got to have a couple 410s and you got to have a couple 360s? Why can't it just be like that?
Well, for a lot of competitors, it is like that. It kind of depends on where you live and what your opportunities are. A guy from Oklahoma or Tennessee, maybe, he's got the 410 and the 360 because he has to be able to go in either direction. But in places like Iowa or Pennsylvania, the lines are a lot more defined. He's a 410 driver and he's a 360 driver, and no driver likes to be labeled in any of those categories. They all say, "Hey, I'll drive whatever you give me. I'll drive as far as I can." The rivalry you speak of, they're the two circuits now, the World of Outlaws and the ASCS Lucas Oil Series, where a driver can earn a living, a traveling sprint car driver can earn a living. So that puts them in competition. It's interesting to see over the last 5 years, or maybe even less, ever since the big Lucas Oil money came into ASCS, that the Outlaws have recognized them as a rival. And I'd like, to be a perfect world like you described, where it's just racing and everybody just schedules races and everyone can go to all those races. But people were, they circle the wagons and they protect what they think is theirs or what they perceive as a threat. And when guys, tell the Outlaws, look, if you don't do things the way I want, I'm going to go run ASCS because I can make more money in the point fund anyway. That they don't like to hear that, so they're going to take steps to try to keep their guys doing that. I don't like it, but it's just the way of the world.
Yeah.
And greed maybe. That's a human emotion.
Yeah, no doubt. Right.
To keep keep the people under your banner for whatever reason. I think it's insecurity. I've always felt like, regarding the Outlaws, that their best strategy was to let their guys go run All-Stars and let their guys go run ASCS, because invariably they win. And then it makes them look better. It just makes it look like the only reason these guys are winning races is because we're not there. If we were there, we'd be taking the money. So why don't you come watch us?
Good point. Yeah, never thought of it that way.
But they don't think of it that way either. The way they think is that somebody who was going to buy some merchandise from our trailer just spent it over there, and now they're not going to spend it over here. So we need to make it so those guys can't go to those races. And it is kind of petty, but it's been going on a long time, as long as rich guys been buying 3 motors instead of 1.
No doubt.
Regardless of the status of the World of Outlaws and what the future might be going forward, it would seem that the future of 410 racing would be dependent upon how it goes in Pennsylvania and how it goes on a weekly basis at Knoxville. Just how strong is 410 racing in Pennsylvania? Is it as strong as it's ever been?
I think it may be. I mean, as far as the talent that's coming there, because of the options that are closing off for 410 racers, guys that want to earn a living, if they can't get in the Outlaws or stay in the Outlaws, a guy like Andy Wasowski, or Darren Pittman, or even Justin Henderson from South Dakota, they move to Central PA, and Central PA is still the only place I can find where they have legitimate car owners that are not affiliated with their sons or their cousins or their nephews. These guys like Joe Trone and Owen that owns the 30C that the Weiss runs, and of course back in the day Al Hamilton and Bob Weichert, they were, if you didn't win, you were out. And I'm getting somebody else, and if he doesn't win, he's out. And it fosters a real spirit of competition out there. Now, car count wise, I don't know. I wouldn't say Knoxville and Central PA are stronger than they've ever been that way. But boy, there's a lot of full timers out there now, and every year it seems like we're seeing more people going to Central PA on a regular or semi-regular basis, which is great for the level of competition. But of course, it means really that maybe Danny Wasowski isn't going to be running Knoxville this year, which kind of lowers the level of their competition. I don't think Knoxville, I think they've been doing better. I certainly don't think they'd be running as many 305 races if they weren't happy with the structure as it is. I do think the 410s are disappearing. Like you mentioned, it's really just an Iowa, California national traveling class, with a few exceptions.
Yeah.
They don't seem to be dwindling. I mean, among those two, but elsewhere they are.
Yeah, I was going to say California, they seem to have dropped off in 410 by quite a bit.
360 is starting to come around out there, too, by the way.
They may.
Yeah.
The King of the West last year paid some real money. I mean, to be the Civil War champion, paid $10,000. To be the King of the West, paid Tim Kading $20,000. And that'll get them talking. That things don't happen overnight. You have to change perception. And, money is the quickest way to change that perception.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of sprint cars in California, so their goal, the King of the West, is to convince, some of the guys who maybe don't. You go to a Civil War race, they got 50 cars a lot of times, and making the show is not easy.
Yeah.
So if you look around and you go, shit, they only got 25 sprint cars.
You're all right.
Over there.
We're on the internet right now, so you're good, buddy.
Good thing for that.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Yeah.
I can go over there, and I can make the Golden State race at feature at Calistoga and leave with starting money. If I go to run Petaluma against 40 cars, I might not. They might be able to sway the tide that way.
Right.
Out there in California and change some perception, but otherwise there's not very many pockets of 410 races.
Well, I know just by my recent trips out there with the national tour for the last 3 years, you look at the schedule this year, we're going to Santa Maria, Chico, Placerville, Tulare. I mean, we're out there quite a bit this year, and then we go to Elma as well. We're going to Lebanon, Oregon. So there's some pretty big pockets of some 360s out there, and ASCS is working hard to try to get a reputation out there and get some regions working in that Southwest region, and then they've got the Northwest and Southern California region, which struggled a little bit last year, but still, I think it's going to be good. All right, listen, I want to talk to you about some top stories that have happened here as of late, and I don't know if there's one bigger right now than Jason Meyers calling it, I don't know, not quit. He hasn't quit. He's going to run these 14 races. But, you know, there has to be more to the story of why he decides to pull out after winning the championship last year. I know he says all the right things about his family, and we know that is a big portion of it. But I got to feel that the whole Stevie Smith and what was going on there, the two-car team, had to come and play at this deal. What do you think?
I think it did. I mean, I think, you know, that this was probably a decision he was mulling over, but the timing of it makes me think that the events over the winter contributed to it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Chris Luck, you know, they started to come up with a second car for Stevie Smith, which was going to be separate. And then there's another thing drivers don't like. No driver wants to hear that he's having a team car.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't like it because they want everything to go to them. And it was kind of assured to him that it was going to stay that way. But then things started to overlap, and next thing you know, they had a bit of a blowout. And Chris Luck, he's a GLR Investments, and was the majority owner in Jason's car, and he left. So there's a void. But he's a savvy guy. I think he could have probably made up that cash elsewhere. He's got about 40 people that technically own his car.
Mm-hmm.
But then he lost his mechanic too, you know, Brian Bloomfield. So he didn't, you know, now you're going to have to break in a new guy on the road, which is very difficult. Maybe he didn't want to do that. He had a comfort level with Brian that he
Mm-hmm.
was going to have to reproduce elsewhere. And then I think, you know, I was looking at the timing of it. You know, him and his wife and his family are over in Australia for a good 2-3 weeks, and he's probably, you know, sitting by the beach thinking about his future and thinking, you know what, I'm on top. You know, what am I going to do? I'm going to go out there and win it again. You know, okay, great. But he knows what's involved in doing that. It's damn hard. So it might have been time. And I've heard that, you know, Jason wants to. He doesn't want to, you know, live his life in the Outlaws. He's got other ideas about maybe stock cars or something else.
He's not getting any younger. He's not getting any younger, right?
He's not.
Mm-hmm.
He's not. And if you want to get into stock cars, you know, he's probably too old now. I mean,
Right, no doubt.
In the public perception, we know he can drive, but everybody wants to, you know, the Kyle Larsons, the 19-year-olds, the 18-year-olds, the 17-year-olds that they think they can train. So I do think the timing of it, you know, indicates to me that there were some other factors at play. Otherwise, you know, why wouldn't he do it at the banquet, or why wouldn't he do it in a little more formal setting? I think it was kind of like, I don't want to go back out there we'll find a new mechanic. I have to go round up some money. You know, he's whittled down these exclusive deals with Charlie Garrett engines and KPC chassis, and maybe those guys were on him that they wanted to, you know, they wanted to open up and get new business, and that might have been a factor as well. I know that most of the people in the Outlaw Trail that I talked to are not real happy with management and the direction, if you can call it that, of the tour. So
that's been going on a while. That's been going on a while, though, hasn't it, Kevin? I mean, you hear all these rumors and things, but they keep plugging away.
Sure, because they really don't have any options. If you're out there, if you've thrown your eggs in the basket as a 410 professional, you know, where can you go? You can run the World of Outlaws, or you can go to Central PA. The All Stars, they improved themselves last year with all those little regions.
Mm-hmm.
They're taking a feather from Emmett's cap, you know, and realizing if we have regions and then have the regions feed the main national thing, that's a smart way. But a guy like Raymer and DeWeese, they made some pretty good money last year with these regional series. So maybe you could earn a living that way. But that's about it. So you kind of have to, you know, it's like Jason Sides and his suit, and people are critical of now because he's still running the Outlaws. You're suing the Outlaws, but now you're still out there running with the Outlaws.
Mixed message.
He doesn't have a lot of options.
Right. Yeah, he does. He could come run with the national tour, Lucas Oil.
And he might.
Yeah.
He might. He's still, you know, if they pay him his money tomorrow, he'd probably stay there. But they're not going to. It's an ego thing now, I think. You know, neither side wants to give an inch. So he's gonna pick and choose. He's at East Bay this weekend running 360s, which if he was a platinum member, he wouldn't be allowed to come here. So it's already, you know, if he wins $10,000 a night, which is what it pays to win the Ronald Laney Memorial tonight, then he'll be looking at his situation a whole lot differently, I think.
Yeah. Do you think that's good for the? Do you think that's good for the sport? I obviously the answer is no, but I mean, to dictate where these guys can run within 24 hours of their event or how many miles away. I mean, gosh, I couldn't race under those circumstances, to be honest with you. I can't let somebody control my destiny, and it seems like that's what the Outlaws try to do.
They do. I mean, I do see both sides of it. As a fan, I don't want to see a rig parked in the parking lot with a driver who can't run because of some silly rule like you just described.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm trying to, grow a brand, as the phrase is now, and build my series, and I have, say, 10 guys or 12 guys, and they're flitting off and running with this circuit and that circuit, to the casual fan that you're trying to appeal to, because us hardcore people, we're going to go.
Right, right.
You're looking for the people who don't really know it as deeply as we do.
Casual
they
fan,
confused.
right? Casual fan, right?
Yes, they've always wanted. If you want to see Steve Kinser, you have to come to an outlaw race. You have to pay, the $35, $40, whatever the ticket price is, to come to see him here. Because if he runs, and we have this problem in a situation, I should call it, in Indiana. USAC pays $5,000 to win, but all the local tracks pay $1,400 to win, and most of the guys, with just a few exceptions, will run those local races. So how do you get their purse? How do you get a USAC purse to come up when they say, "Look, you guys are run for $1,400. Why should we pay you $10?" It's hard to tell a racer. Always has been that if you don't race today, you may get more money tomorrow, because they're addicts. They want to run their race cars. They don't want to sit there and be political. Nobody wants to be political.
Yeah.
But I see both sides of it. When Ted Johnson was alive and thriving, he kept those guys so busy, running 100 times a year, that they weren't really looking to fill their off days like they are now.
Mm-hmm.
And a guy could earn a living, and it was harder to police. If he had a race on a Wednesday, how do you prevent a promoter from scheduling a race on a Tuesday on your way there for a little less money, but put a lot on top, and then get the same guys, and then maybe the fans don't come to your race.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I think, what started it. And he started with some, 48 hours within 150 miles rule or something goofy. And the World Racing Group has been very, very, I would guess flexible is the right word, on what they allow you to do. Now it's just basically, if it's not one of our races, you have to ask us to run. And it does seem like it's petty, and if you're a grown man who's been spending, thousands of dollars, you don't want some phone call to be able to tell you that you can't go.
Mm-hmm.
But, it's just a messy situation. Anytime you bring lawyers into it, it's
never good.
It's never good.
Were you up at Bubba Raceway Park last night?
No, I wasn't. I went there on Thursday night, and I've been down here East Bay for the 360s last night and tonight. I've been watching Shane Stewart.
How about Shane?
He put it on. I mean, that's a heck of a car, that Joe Gertie, Kim Norman deal, and I've always been a Shane Stewart fan. I think he's one of the top drivers out there.
Top guys, too. Personality-wise, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I'm a huge Shane Stewart fan. He sent me a message on Facebook. I'm going to call him today. This guy's down to earth. He could be, no pun intended, he could be the rock star sprint car driver, you know what I mean? Because everybody thinks so much of him and the kind of guy he is, but he keeps his feet grounded. What are you hearing that is going to happen with Shane Stewart? Is him and Paul Silver still going to run a limited schedule? Is he going to drive this Gertie car? Is he going to just bounce around? What do you think is going to happen with Shane?
I think Silva's coming back. I thought I read Shane saying that recently. I haven't asked him personally, and the season really, he'll probably go run those races beginning of the year, kind of like the Outlaws are doing. They'll run the first month because there's not a lot of options where you can race, and then maybe come up with an evaluation around April about whether you're going to stay with the national tour or start picking and choosing. I know that Joe Gertie wants to run more with that car that they have down here, and he certainly would like Shane to drive it, and Shane likes that car. And Silva, he's a poker face. He won't tip his hand if he's coming or not, because he's probably trying to get some more money to do it.
You know it, right?
Yeah, that's just the way it works. If people think you're committed to something, well, then they don't think their money's going to make the difference. But if you're on the fence, then maybe another sponsor would keep it going. I think Rockstar. Actually, I don't know if Rockstar is still with the 57.
No, they're not. They did not come back this year, and that was a big blow for them that they didn't come back. And he made that announcement on our broadcast last year that they weren't coming back. And I know that Paul Silva, he doesn't care for the draw either. I mean, there's pros and cons to the draw. You could debate it either way if you want. Compare it to qualifying. The track gives up as you qualify. The track isn't the same if you're the last car out as the first car out. Yeah, and all the problems, what people would consider problems with the draw. But with that all being said, I know that Paul is not a big fan of the draw, and I know that Paul and Shane would love to be out and run the full schedule with Outlaws. We know that. But you know what? I think it's important that we keep Shane Stewart as one of our marquee drivers. You mentioned that. You got Jason Johnson, Brady Bacon, Shane Stewart. We've got to keep those marquee names to build our brand.
Yeah, it does help. When you get constant turnover, it confuses the casual fan. And Shane is a spokesperson. Everybody likes him. He's good with the fans. He's well spoken. He hangs out socially, but he's not. He's not in the bars so often.
Nope. Right. No.
So he's just social enough to get his picture taken with everybody, and he's very gracious. He's been humbled throughout his career, so he's not a spoiled brat that just thinks that everything is to be presented to me. And a heck of a driver, clean, can run the top, run the bottom, and run next to somebody without hitting them. Generally, I mean, there's exceptions, but I like him, and I think you're right that ASCS would be wise to keep him. I do hear a lot of unrest about the draw. I mean, competitors, they love time trials because if I have a better car than you, time trials generally help separate me from you. I don't have to worry about that you drew ahead of me or I didn't get enough passing points and now I'm stuck in this B main and I just drove from Kansas City to Petaluma.
Right. No, I understand that. I understand the pros and cons of both sides, but I think you can find things about qualifying too that work to your disadvantage.
No question. There's no perfect system, and I as a kid from Pennsylvania, I don't like qualified. It's not racing. It's one car on the track by itself, which does not do it for me. So I don't watch it. But it is a fair way. I mean, there are if you have a 50-car field and the track is sloppy, and the first 10, maybe 15 guys that go out, that's not fair because they're not getting the same track that the last 10, 15 guys are going to get. But ASCS was getting such good car counts at a lot of those tracks that, to show up at Devil's Bowl and draw a pill in the back and you don't get to pass anybody because maybe the track is heavy, and now you're back in the B and you still don't get to pass anybody or it's tough, and then you just towed all the way down there to not. So in your mind, you didn't get an honest shot to make it.
No, I understand.
But I like the pill draw. I don't like time trials. I kind of like. I think the best system is what Emmett used with the Bandits with the double heats. Because then if you got a bad draw, you have a chance to make it up.
Second chance, right? Qualifier, heat and a qualifier, right?
Exactly. But it may not be feasible when you have 50 cars, because you can't make the show run all night or wear the track out and then have the feature be a single lane deal. So, there's no perfect way to do it, but I do hear gripes, especially from top teams regarding, I hear ASCS referred to as the pill draw series with a little bit of sarcasm. But, generally, to me, the people that like qualifying are the ones that have the best engines.
Well, and one of our guys that is the most vocal on our series is Gary Wright. But like I tell everybody, Gary Wright can complain about the pill draw all he wants, but he did win 4 championships doing it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. All right.
It just looks I had to work too hard, maybe.
Right, exactly. All right, Kevin, I appreciate you taking all this time to be with us on the show. Hopefully we can have you on in the future. The website is sprintcarstats.com. I recommend it. If you want to know anything about sprint car racing, sprintcarstats.com. Kevin, thanks so much for taking the time. Am I going to see you out in the Southwest?
Not next month. I'm going to stay down here in Florida and blow off California this time. I've been out there about 4 times last year, so I'm going to give my car a little rest and stay down here where it's warm.
How many miles you putting on yours a year? How many miles? On your car? I put 55 on mine last year. What'd you do?
Not too bad. Mine's at 138 138,000, which everybody thinks is low for a car that's been to California as often as it has. But
what year is that? What year is that car?
It's a 97 Ford Escort.
I've got well, that is a road wagon, buddy. Let me tell you, I've got a 2008. It's got 180,000 on it.
You keep good gas mileage with that, huh, Kevin?
Yeah. Yeah.
Not bad.
No,
yeah,
not
that's
bad.
right.
All right, Kevin. Thanks so much. Where am I going to see you? We're going to see you at Devil's Bowl. Where? Any place I'm going to see you? Where's that going to be?
Good question. I haven't. I don't get very many opportunities living in Indiana to see ASCS. But
we'll see you somewhere.
You will. I always tell people when you least expect it. That's when you see it.
All right, Kevin. Thanks so much for the time, bud.
Thanks, Kevin.
Hey, no problem. I love talking racing. Call me anytime, and we'll chew the fat.
We'll definitely do it again. Thank you, bud.
He's good at that.
Have a good weekend.
You bet. Thank you, Kevin. Wow, that went fast.
And I know that was 30 minutes of sprint car talk, but fans, that guy, he knows sprint car racing as well as anybody. He's in it, when it comes to that kind of stuff, stats, anything, he is the man.